You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Katie Horwitch. How to stop screwing yourself over.
Ladies, welcome to Life Check Yourself. I know you're going to jam today because I have Katie Horwitch. She's an author, speaker, mindset coach, and self-talk activist. We all need this in our life. And she is the founder of Want. Get this, Women Against Negative Talk. Amen. This is a platform that gives women tips, tools, motivation, and inspiration to live fearlessly by shifting their negative self-talk patterns. Her first book is called Want Yourself, Shift Your Self-Talk, and Unearth the Strength in Who You Were All Along, which was published by Sounds True. Guides you on a path to actually change your self-talk at the deepest level so you can move forward fearlessly into the life you're meant to live. So we're going to talk about how to get rid of the shit in your head. Katie, I'm so glad that you're here. It's funny. I was, so I've been talking about this a lot because I'm an Olympics nerd, but while we're recording this, the Olympics are still on. And I was listening to an interview with one of the swimmers, and he was talking about, he had this passion. He loves his sport, but every single time he got into the water, the shit talking in his head, the inner critic, he called it, would sort of take over, and he was in constant self-judgment, and it stole his joy, but also his performance wasn't as great as he wanted it to. So I think the first thing is I want to always go back to like the basic 101 level, because some people here need to hear it. Talk about how the voice in our head, like, is not who we really are. Because I think there's a whole set of people that just think this is the truth. This is the way it is, that there's no way to change it. And this is just how you live life. So do you want to just start at the basic framework here?
Yeah. Well, and believe it or not, there's an even more basic framework
Love
that
it.
precedes that. So it's so interesting. I've been doing this work now for almost 20 years. And inevitably, at some point, every few months, I have someone who says to me, so self-talk, like, well, what does that mean? And what I've realized is not everybody knows what self-talk is. So let's just set like some ground level definitions here. Self-talk, I define self-talk as the story you tell yourself about yourself 24/7 as you walk through the world. And that for some people, I'm an inner monologue person. When people think of self-talk, they usually think of words. They usually think of literally talking to yourself. But what's really, really interesting is not everybody's self-talk shows up as words. There are some people who their self-talk, using air quotes here, shows up like a movie playing out in their mind. It shows up as visuals. There are some people who are auditory. There are some people who have abstract feelings like ooh or eek or ah. And so what ends up happening many times is we will, especially when we're in conversation with other people, if we're not words-based people, we will latch on to the words that are the most similar to what we're feeling, which you're describing the Olympics. The Olympics are so dramatic. They're like this mega long movie in and of itself. If you've ever watched an incredible movie and then someone asks you to describe it, it's almost like you can't really get it into words. And it's like, okay, well, you've just got to see it. You've got to see it in action. You've got to see these athletes in action. And for some people, self-talk is exactly like that. And so taking that definition into account, it's also important to recognize that self-talk isn't inherently good or bad. It's information. And it's what we do with that information that informs what we do next and next and next. So when people talk about like, well, how do I stop my negative self-talk, or how do I get rid of like my inner critic? I always like to reel people back a little and allow them to recognize that this is actually all information that we are feeding ourselves to tell our own story throughout the day. And it can either move us forward or hold us back, but it's not about what we're actually saying. It's about what we do with it, which is like what you described with those athletes.
That's amazing. It's really interesting. I was just talking to another guest yesterday who works with teens and parents. And she was saying that, you know, as a society, we're getting better at like acknowledging our feelings, right? We're like, oh, I'm so sorry you feel that way. It makes perfect sense, right? She said that what happens is we don't know what to do with it. And so that we can stay in those feelings and we don't know how to shift from a feeling state into some sort of inner monologue, dialogue, whatever it looks like, so that we can move on, right? So what I hear you saying is like, okay, I'm feeling my feelings. There's some sort of stuff going on. How could I now take that and use it for good rather than for fear or for evil, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, easier said than done.
Right.
And there's a reason why we've heard I've heard this so many times. I'm not going to put words into your mouth, but I can probably assume that you've heard multiple times people say like, well, just be nicer to yourself, or talk to yourself like you would a loved one. Or if you wouldn't say it to a best friend, then why would you say it to yourself? If that advice worked, then we would all be walking around feeling incredible about ourselves and saying amazing things all the time. And so I love that you brought that up of, you know, a lot of people really focus on where they want to go. So they want to be kinder to themselves. They want to speak lovingly to themselves. They want to have a lot of self-confidence, self-trust, all of that stuff. But in order to get somewhere, you have to take these steps to get there. You can't just teleport, at least right now in 2024, from one place to the next. And so what I've really, really been passionate about and focused on doing in my work is giving people a framework so that once they get to that place of self-confidence, self-trust, fearlessness, and I have my own definitions for all of those things, great. That it's sustainable and it also can withstand life that will keep lifing and the highs and lows and plot twists of being human. And so when people say, okay, I just want to say this thing instead of this thing, I always like to suggest that instead of starting with the talk part of self-talk, they actually reel it back and they start with the self part of self-talk, because the talk is symptomatic. It's the self and the groundedness or not that you have in yourself that is going to inform what that self-talk brings up and then how you move forward. Does that make sense?
Totally. So when you said that, I'm imagining like a map, like a crossroads, right? And you're like, okay, so I am at this crossroads and I'm having whatever experience I'm having. And so I can create or curate sort of whatever talk I'm having, not by my head necessarily or trying to think my way out of it, because you're saying that's hard. We all could do it. But
it's not hard because you're doing it wrong. Right. It's like it's hard because it's hard.
It's hard. To me, it's like, so let's go back to my analogy. To me, it's almost like you would be trying to navigate, like using a 1.0 version of an app that showed like your town like 25 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like everything would be different, right? So even if you have the map, if it's not grounded in some sort of like presence, right, then it doesn't matter. So if we know that, then we get to this point of like, well, the only choice that I have is to really cultivate this self, idea, this identity, this ego, whatever it is, self-worth, so that I can start to curate my thoughts. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because if we're functioning under the idea that self-talk isn't inherently good or bad, it's information, and it's what we do with that information that informs what we do next, and that the talk part is symptomatic and will stem from whatever is going on the self level. You know, if we think of like a house and you think of the foundation of the house, if there's an earthquake, if that foundation isn't strong, the house is going to topple over. I grew up in Southern California, so I'm very familiar with this analogy.
Right.
If the foundation is strong, then yeah, maybe you'll get shaken up a little bit. Maybe some things will fall off of the wall, but you will be able to bounce back quicker and more efficiently. And that is my own goal with my own self-talk. People say to me all the time, like, oh, you must never have negative self-talk. And I'm like, well, I do, because I'm a human and not a robot. But just because I do this work doesn't mean that I'm immune to it. But what's really cool is that the more you do it, the more habitual it is. And so when that negative self-talk arises, of whether it's, I'm so stupid, or I am not talented enough, or who would ever want me, or I guess it's too late for me, any of that stuff, when that comes up, you're able to shift and pivot quicker in the moment without resorting to what we see a lot, especially on the internet, because it's easy, it's bite-sized, of just replace one phrase with another, because that there's research around this, around why that doesn't work. Because if you don't believe what you're saying, even a seed of belief, then it feels like you're lying to yourself. And then you feel like a liar. And then it's like this cognitive dissonance happens of, I'm feeling this way, but I'm telling myself this other thing. And what is more important is to identify, okay, well, what can you believe? So maybe it's really, really a reach to believe, let's say, it's too late for me is a big one. Yeah. Especially I coach a lot of women. Yep. A lot of women who are in, like, they've been in their career or in their lifestyle for a very long time, and they want to make a pivot, and they're like, well, it's too late for me. Switching that to it's not too late for me, that is a really big jump to make. So, well, yeah, because you have all this evidence. Let's reel it back. Well, you have all. So let's just unpack that, because I think this is really huge, right? Like, okay, so I just want to go back to something that you said. I don't want it to get lost, because we're talking about the self-talk. We were like, okay, it starts with self, and then how you talk to yourself impacts what you do next. Right. And so I want to tie that back to this whole idea of, like, it's not too late for me, right? Like, just, it's not like, there's nothing that makes me crazier when I'm hearing, like, I'm just going to be blunt. Like, when I hear a coach be like, flip the script, what's the opposite of your limiting belief? I'm like, dude, if it were that easy, like, you can read that in a book. Okay. So here's why it's really important, because it impacts what you do next. So it's, to me, it's like, okay, I think it's too late for me. The internet, Mel Robbins, love her, says, like, it's not too late. You could start over tomorrow. Right. But if I don't really believe that, then what am I going to do next? Because I'm just not going to do anything. It's like, doesn't seem real. So what do you do to, like, bridge the gap? What's the process for actually getting into action? Okay, I'm about to totally nerd out around self-talk shifting here. I love that this is our example too, because I think it's also incredibly fascinating that too late, that is relative, because we are all at different ages and stages of our lives. But let's think of somebody who, let's say there's two people who are in their 80s, and there's an 82-year-old and an 88-year-old. And the 82-year-old is saying, oh, I want to start painting, but it's too late for me. The 88-year-old might be saying, I wish that I had started at 82 because then I would have 6 years of painting under my belt, you know? So I think that we, especially the way that our society is engineered, you know, we live in a society that is very ageist at its core and is very, it likes the status quo. It likes people to believe that there are very harsh parameters around what we can and can't do at different ages and stages of our life. So let's say that it's too late for me is the self-talk that's coming up, the self-talk story. First, you have to look at, okay, what's the information there? Maybe the information is, I heard this somewhere. I heard that, I don't know. I'm a baby of the 80s and a child of the 90s. And I grew up with all of those magazines where it was like, don't wear this after 40.
Oh my God.
And so, you know, maybe it's too late for me. Maybe it's informed by the media that you were consuming when you were growing up. Maybe it was something you heard from a community member. Maybe it's actually not that it's too late. Maybe that is something that feels like it's a safe way to say, I'm really, really scared, or this is very, very new. Maybe there's like some validity there. Maybe you saw someone do something at a certain time in their lives and it didn't go so well. And so you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to keep yourself safe. Very, very rarely is the information, I would like to say never, but I very rarely use the word never. So very rarely is the information that you get from your negative self-talk that you think is so mean, that you think is the critic. Very rarely is the information that I really want to bully this person, myself, Katie, Marni, whoever it is. It actually is usually something that is trying to help you out or keep you comfortable, because comfort can feel like safety. It usually has a seemingly helpful intention or stemmed from a place that, you know, you just talked about proof, like you're gathering proof. And so if this happened to this person, then maybe it'll happen to this person. So that is number one. Sometimes that's all that people need. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, I remember I heard my grandma say that. And so then my mom said that. And so this is just something that I say now. And then sometimes people are like, okay, cool. Like I can shift it. So that's why it's really important to start with the base level, like what is actually going on here? Because then from there, you can start to, I think of shifting your self-talk as like going into a toolkit. There's a whole lot of tools beyond just a hammer or just a screwdriver. So then you can start to figure out, okay, well, what tools do I need? Where do I need to go from here? Maybe a hammer is all that you needed today. And that's great. But let's start with the base level of what's actually going on and then move on from there.
Yeah. And I really, really love this because the lies we tell ourselves, right? And so one example is, you know, I heard it from other people. One example is, well, if I tell myself that, then I don't ever have to try. I don't have to fail. I don't have to deal with it, right? And so there's like layers of complexity, right? And so I think the other thing I think we should talk about too is I just did a little video about overwhelm. And I think we'll go back to, it's too late for me, whatever it is you want. But we get overwhelmed, right? And so I don't know how, I don't know who, I can't do, I don't have time, right? All these things. And those are all real and they're genuine and they can be overcome with right information, right? With clarity. And so what I love what you're talking about is that this framework, it allows you to be radically honest with yourself and cut through your own bullshit. Just say, I'm scared. What if I fail? What if other people think I'm a wackadoodle because I pivoted in my 40s or 50s or whatever it is, right? And so I think that this whole framework is just really important for us looking at like, hey, are we telling lies at ourselves? Is the little liar inside finding different creative ways? Because everyone who's listening to this show is very smart. So it's never, it's always so much more subtle and nuanced, like you're talking about.
Totally. And I like that you keep bringing on like the liar inside, because it's actually in the work that I've done with people and in the research I've done, it's like, you wouldn't believe it if some part of it didn't resonate as truth, right? So that's why sometimes I push back when people say like, my inner mean girl, my inner bully, the liar. It's like, it's resonating for a reason, because if it felt at your core like what you were saying to yourself wasn't true, then it would be easy to be like, well, that doesn't feel right. That's not what I believe. So I'm going to cut that off. So I really, really encourage people, as uncomfortable as it can be, to dig in and not take the first phrase and the first thing that you hear or feel from that negative self-talk as the whole story. I really encourage people to dig deeper and be like, okay, well, what about this? What little kernel in here is so believable to me that I'm letting it like fester and sprout and grow into what can be just like my MO, my way of walking through the world.
I love this. Okay. I want to talk about what you call emotionally heavy words. And I want to also, well, let's just start with defining that. And then I want to make sure we talk about self-deprecating thoughts and humor and things like that, because it's like my pet peeve. I have kids who are in their late 20s and mid 20s, and sometimes it comes out and I'm like, it's not funny.
Okay, we'll put a pin in that.
Put a pin in that because this is my passion. Okay, so let's talk about emotionally heavy words.
Let's get into it. Emotionally heavy words are words that we use to ourselves, with ourselves, but also in conversation, that are so like universally weighty in their meaning. They're so, like, I call them emotionally heavy words because they weigh on you, and their meaning is so strong and can elicit such a visceral reaction that it sort of like hijacks the entire moment. And so people can have different emotionally heavy words in their lives. In my book, Want Yourself, I gave a couple examples of words that I call my must censor words.
Okay, great. What are they?
Just like, can I curse on this podcast?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right. Just like that. Like I love an F-bomb. I love a strategically placed F-bomb, shit ton, all of the stuff, those, like crap bag, whatever. I don't use them all of the time. I censor them. And if I use them, it's with a very specific intention. So it's the same with emotionally heavy words. The words that I use that I list in the book, there's two that are like my oof words, which are hate and ugly. Those are two words that if you even think them, they are so extreme that it's very hard to like redefine that word in your head, Ugly is my major pet peeve word, because that is something that I think, okay, this is just like little side anecdote. I was just on vacation with my family. Yeah. And we were up in the Santa Barbara area, and we went to a place called Ostrich Land.
Love it.
Have you ever heard of Ostrich Land?
No, I have not, but it sounds adorable.
Ostrich Land is exactly what it sounds like. It is a big old field with ostriches and emus running around.
I love that.
And you get, you can, for like $7 or $8 or whatever, you can get like a tin pan of ostrich, like, I don't know what to call it, seeds, kibble, pellets,
Whatever.
and you feed the ostriches and the emus. Have you ever seen an ostrich in real life?
I have. I think they're so unattractive that they're adorable with their little bald heads and their little like 3 hairs on the top. They just remind me of like a little
They
old man.
are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
They're literally, I look at them and I'm like, oh yeah, this is probably what a pterodactyl looks like. And so we're feeding them. I love them. And they're just they're so out of the ordinary of what you would see ever.
Yeah.
And I love the ones that have like the big eyelashes. So they're like these feathery dinosaurs with big eyes and big eyelashes. And one of the people that I was with, they were like, oh my gosh, they're so ugly. And I was like, no, they're not. They're just different. Sometimes they can be a little territorial over food. Fun fact about
I can imagine.
ostriches.
Yeah.
But I think that they are so fascinating and so like, I mean, I think they're beautiful in their own way, but that's the way that a lot of people use the word ugly, right? When it comes to physical appearance.
Especially now, right? On the internet.
Especially now. Yes. So ugly to me is one of those words that I highly censor. The only time when I will ever use the word ugly personally is when it comes to some sort of mean, vindictive, really, really like horrible personality trait, like the way that someone else treats someone else. Like that to me is ugly. So using that as our example of the emotionally heavy word, first, you have to recognize that you're doing it, right? So if there's certain words like hate or ugly, or there's a category that I didn't put in the book, but I now call minimizers. So words like only or just. These aren't bad words, but it's how we use them, the emotion that we attach to them, and the subtext that they say, that's the issue. And so in order to shift it, it's about, let's say if the word is ugly, let's say a lot of people will use that word when it comes to themselves, and that really breaks my heart.
Yeah.
I like to tease apart the idea that self-love doesn't necessarily mean self-like. So some people, let's just use your body, for example. Not yours, but
big
one's
topic.
Body,
One's body, big topic.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're saying, ugh, my thighs are so ugly or my hair is so ugly, I encourage people to think of self-love more along the lines of unconditional love, where if you think of unconditional love, like if you think of your kids, I'm assuming that you love them unconditionally, right?
I do. Yes.
Do you always like everything that they do or they say or
No.
the way that they act?
No.
Exactly. Leading the witness there a little bit. But yeah, so it's the same with ourselves and the relationship we have with ourselves. So if you are someone who ugly is the emotionally heavy word that you use a lot that you could really benefit from censoring, I always suggest that people get back into the moment and work the 2 words right now into your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying, or like hate, this works with hate too. Let's say, oh, I hate my hair. Maybe you don't hate your hair. Can you not like your hair right now? Like, was there any time at any
So
point
funny.
in time, or would you like there in the future to be a point where you actually do like your hair? Or maybe you even say, I think my hair is amazing. That's a really big jump to do. And so really getting back into the moment and deciphering what we're actually saying, what that emotionally heavy word is filler for, is really important. Just like if we were to drop an F-bomb, if we were to say fuck or shit, like what does that actually mean? If I am in the kitchen and I drop something and I say fuck, it means I dropped something and I was really surprised by that, or I'm so sad that I broke that thing, or I am now delayed. You know, it's
saying a lot
filler
more.
Word.
It is a filler word. It's a
always
shortcut.
Encourage people with those emotionally heavy words to like say more. What else here? Instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to get rid of it, because that's really hard, especially if you're in the habit of using that word over and over.
I like right now, I just went to the East Coast for like a week and my hair was very big. It was very hot and very humid. And I was like, literally like, I hate my hair right now. I was like, I really like my hair when there's no humidity. But it was true, right? Like it was like, this is like really feeling frustrating for me. And it sounds like it's such a first world problem. Your hair.
No, but it's true. And we're human. And we're allowed to
totally
not like what our hair is doing that day.
Totally. Yeah. I need a little thing. Okay. Let's talk about, before we go, I want to talk about self-deprecating, because I see this a lot, like, and I don't even know maybe if there's some heavy emotional words that are part of that, but, and also a lot of, I think people are really into a lot of psychology words, like don't gaslight me. I'm so triggered. I
have so much.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just an anxious person, or it's okay, I'm just anxious. Like almost lightening all these things. And what I was thinking is like it makes me feel distant, or I don't really know what to do when someone uses those words, especially when it's self-deprecating. So what do we do for that? And then also when someone does it around you, what do you do? Because I'm like, bleh.
Well, and that can be the more uncomfortable thing to do than to work on your own self-deprecation, right? Because that involves somebody else. And okay, what do you do in this situation? So being self-deprecating, I mean, it's a common tactic that's used in comedy, especially with like stand-up comics. And there is a time and a place for mindful self-deprecation. I'm not going to say all self-deprecation is bad. However, the way that a lot of us just colloquially through our days use self-deprecation, that's where we run into the problems, because many times we will self-deprecate to relate. And there's research around the fact that because of evolutionary reasons of us needing to know what areas were safe, what berries wouldn't be poisonous, making sure that, a tiger didn't eat us in the woods or whatever, there are reasons why we are able to bond over negativity so quickly. Because way back in the early days of humanity, served a really important purpose to know what areas were safe, what areas were dangerous, who your enemies were. That was really important information. And so it comes so naturally to us, not because there's anything wrong with us, but because it is something that we have evolved to do really, really, really well.
Okay.
But this automatic negative self-talk that we use over and over without emotion attached, I call that casual negativity. And that oftentimes is the category that self-deprecation falls under, where you would say something like, oh, I can't believe I did that, the way that you would say, oh, look, the sky is blue. There's actually not a lot of emotion attached to it. It's the end of bonding over it. So when it comes to self-deprecation, I think many people are uncomfortable with, being their most braggadocious self and, talking themselves up, hyping themselves up, especially women. We have been over many, many decades conditioned to believe that confidence is synonymous with narcissism or vanity. And so if someone's listening right now and they're like, I don't know if I self-deprecate a lot in my use this casual negativity, but I have a feeling I might. I would suggest take maybe one day, or if you're feeling really, really pumped up about this, take 1 week and just listen to yourself. Just notice what you say about yourself to other people, what comes out of your mouth that sounds, that feels really easy to come out of your mouth. And you don't have to do anything with it yet. That is, people want to jump and skip those steps like we talked about, and they want to shift in the moment, but you can't shift what you don't know exists. And so the first part is like, let's just get the lay of the land, see what's going on. And then if you are like me, you'll probably notice after that little either day-long, or I would really suggest week-long experiment, you'll notice that there were certain either phrases that you used more often than others.
Right.
There were certain topics that you used it under more than others.
Right.
Maybe it was your body, maybe it's work.
Right.
Or there were certain scenarios that you used it more than others. Maybe it was with family because that's the currency of bonding that your family has developed. Maybe it was at work. Maybe it's with strangers. So just notice what is going on. And then what you can do is you can start to sort of reverse engineer and to ask yourself, well, how would I want to be in that situation? So let's say you're being super self-deprecating and say, well, I don't want to be self-deprecating. Okay, well then what do you want to be? Because, and what does that actually mean? Like, get specific. Because if we don't get specific about that, what's going to end up happening is we're going to start self-deprecating all over again, not because we fell off the positive self-talk wagon or we did it wrong, but just because that's what's habit. That's what already feels so natural. And so we have to get so clear on what we're going to fill that empty space with. And it is a practice. Shifting your self-talk is something that you need to practice.
Right. And be conscious about it.
Practice, it'll, you'll be able to shift it more efficiently.
Yeah. It's funny. My youngest daughter, just graduated from college, but she's a recovering perfectionist. But when she would get her less than ideal grade, which was anything but perfect, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm so stupid," and I'd be like, "No, right?" And so she's doing a lot better on that. But I think it's like it becomes such a habit, And what you were saying about it's just information, right? That everything that we're saying, like if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, is a filler for something else. Mm-hmm. So getting clear on what you actually want to say would make it really a lot easier, a lot less challenging than just saying, I'm going to stop doing something else, right?
Totally. I mean, that's why, you see it personally, you see it interpersonally, you see it communally. If we don't know what we're fighting for and all we know is what we're fighting against, then what happens when that thing goes away? A lot of times we will just revert back to the way things were, not necessarily because we want to. But I love that you brought up the grades, because I just want to add a little anecdote. I am the same as your daughter. And when I would get a grade that was below my standard, my dad would always say to me, "Did you try the best you could?" And I would answer honestly. Yeah. And if I said yes, then he's like, "All right, great. Well, you tried the best you could, and this was your best right now." If he said, "Did you try the best you could?" And because people pleaser, even if I said, "Yeah," but I knew, I didn't try the best I could, that's really good information. Right. Like it's the information that you can unearth from your self-talk it's gold. It is gold when it comes to figuring out like why you are the way you are right now, what your habits are right now, and how you want to be moving forward.
Yeah. And I think that this impacts, the way you show up as a leader at work. It shows up in your relationship, whether you're single or dating or married or partnered up. It impacts your relationship, with your siblings, kids, parents, if they're still around, all of those sorts of things. And so we think it's just a me problem. Mm-hmm. But what I hear you saying is that this can kind of filter into everything that you do, because it's how, it's how you're, how you are expressing yourself to yourself is going to impact how you show up on the outside.
Totally. You're right. It's not a me problem. It is a we issue, which comes back to like someone else using self-deprecating humor, and being the other person who's on the receiving end of listening to that. You can challenge people if it feels appropriate, if you have the relationship with people, and be like not asking rhetorically, why would you say that? Or you can, say very, very easily, very breezy, like, oh, we don't do self-deprecating humor around here. Like, try again. Next.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Here, when you said something so interesting, it's like when you go to a comedy show or you watch a comedian on television or whatever, it's almost like you're set up. This is what they're going to do. And also you're like, this is something they wrote. It's a joke, right? Like it's a script, it's a story, it's designed to like create an emotional arc and then a punchline and then you laugh, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm down. But and my husband's British. Our husbands have the same name, by the way. I have a Jeremy.
My gosh. We both have Jeremys.
Yeah. So my Jeremy is British. And so self-deprecating humor is his jam.
I was going to say British humor is like, I grew up with Monty Python, so I'm very familiar. Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm just like, oh, I don't, because I believe it. Like if he'll say like, here's a great example. So one of the things that he's doing now is he's doing some property management. And so I went around with him on the weekend because I just like to see the houses and they're so beautiful and whatever. And so there was like, someone was like, oh, you need to find this playpen. It's in the house. These guests want it. We're like, where's the playpen? My husband doesn't even know what a playpen looks like because he didn't have his own kids. Anyway, and he looked up and he goes, this is fun, isn't it? Right? And I hear that and I'm like, well, I mean, I don't think it's bad. I mean, we're just doing a thing. And right. But for him, he was like trying to be funny. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And that was funny and sarcastic and self-deprecating humor. And I'm just like, I literally don't get it. And so in those moments, I'm like, I look like he spoke like Chinese and I don't understand. Yeah. So last thing is, so if someone's communicating in a way that you care about and you hear those negative, those emotionally heavy words, or you hear the self-deprecating humor, or you hear just a general negative self-talk, like I'm so stupid. Is there like besides like, we don't do that, or that would not have flew. Like, we don't do that around here. He'd be like, eye roll. But is it a me problem? Right? What do we do with these situations when we care about people?
Well, the cool thing about self-talk is that we become fluent in it just like we become fluent in any language, which if you've ever been even in elementary school, high school, if you've ever been in a language course, in order to become fluent in a language, or at the very least proficient at a language, you can't just write it out or think about it in your head. You have to practice out loud with
Yes, got it. Yeah.
And so I always stress that if you are someone who notices that negative self-talk, casual negativity, self-deprecation is sort of the fluency and the currency of the conversation and the bonds that are made from those conversations, the best thing you can do is start to be the one who teaches the person or the group a new language. And so not everybody is going to be receptive to you calling out what they're doing. Not every relationship is that's going to be appropriate. And honestly, every single time, like, you're not going to want to be the self-talk corrector for every
Right. I'm like the self-talk police. I work for Katie.
Right, exactly. We've got some casual negativity, 10-4. But the best thing that you can do is you can be the one who starts to speak that language. And if someone is using self-deprecating humor and maybe it is just not feeling like the conversation that you want to get into of like, you know, you really should shift this and like try something, even if it's making a joke, whatever you say next, you can say it in the language that you want to be spoken. And it's not a shift that is going to happen with the people in your life after one conversation, but I can tell you from experience working with people who have done this and having done this myself with people who I thought they would never not bond over casual negativity. It works. It works because we are humans and humans are communal beings. And it's so cliche, but if you want to see a change and hear a change and feel a change, you kind of sort of need to be the steward of change yourself.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Katie has her movement, Woman Against Negative Talk. So make sure that you go to katiehorwitch.com. And you can also, if you're listening to this, you can see that she is beautiful and smart. So that's exciting. And she's got lots of different things that she's doing in the world. So links are in the show notes, but also you can go to katiehorwitch.com and you can go to wantyourself.com because you all need to read the book. Of course, I'm like, ooh, I want to give this book to like 500 people that I know.
I love it.
Right? That would be great.
Like every author wants to hear that.
I know, exactly. Last words. Mm-hmm. One piece of advice, baby step that we could take to life check ourselves.
So this is what I say to myself over and over again. And so now I am gifting it to your community.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Your audience. Be proactive, not reactive. If you think of what reactive is, it is the situation around you in control of your response. And it's almost like a recoiling. But if you can ask yourself, whether it is when you get up in the morning and you're like, okay, well, I have a day ahead of me, or it's in a really tough scenario, or it is like you're getting maybe rejection after rejection after rejection. If you can ask yourself, how can I be proactive, not reactive right now? What's cool, you talked about baby steps, is that you will be able to prescribe yourself the baby steps that are right for you in the moment, because not every baby step is right for every person and every scenario. But my hope is that people can feel empowered with this work to be proactive, not reactive, in the way that serves them best wherever they are in their lives.
Oh, I love that. Baby steps. Do one thing. Right. Yes. That works for you. And I love your mission. I'm so happy to support it and really bring about the change in the world. It all starts, ladies, it just starts with that one different thing that you do, that one proactive decision that you make about how you speak and how we create a new culture.
Yep. That's how the ripple effect makes waves.
God bless. Amen. Ladies, so many tidbits. I mean, she gave you like a 1-day challenge, a 7-day challenge. We've got some words we're going to start looking at. We've got lots of actions we can take to life check ourselves. So make sure you do that. You can always follow me on Instagram at Marni Battista _ and join the conversation. Again, everything you need to know about Katie is in the show notes, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into today's show. Do you ever wake up feeling like you've already run a marathon before the day even begins? Does your coffee need a coffee just to get through the morning? Well, I feel you, and I've been there. Burnout isn't just a buzzword. It's a reality for far too many of us, especially as we navigate life over 40. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept feeling perpetually drained as your new normal. I'm excited to introduce my new flagship, Live Life on Your Terms program. This isn't just another Band-Aid fix or a fluffy self-care promise. This is about real transformation. We're diving deep to tackle the root cause of your burnout, regulate your nervous system, lower your cortisol and adrenaline, and rewire your neural pathways to transform how you feel in your life from the inside out. Imagine this, waking up energized, not by caffeine, but by excitement and passion for the day ahead. Picture yourself managing stress with grace and finding joy in moments big and small. That's not just a dream or a someday. It's within your reach now. So, if you like what you've heard and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working together, here's what I want you to do next. Email me at vip@datingwithdignity.com. Don't wait for one day. Make today your day one so we can create your next chapter. I'm Marni, and I'll talk to you soon.